Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, the game people have been waiting years for, myself very much included, a fully fledged action RPG where you get to control Goku and company in a semi-open but fully realised world, and it's finally here. Dragon Ball Z games have always been around. Even when the show itself was laying dormant, the games were there to scratch that itch for intense action and flashy attacks. Up until now, as you can probably imagine, most of these games have been fighting games. We have the Budokai series, the Tenkaichi series, Burst Limit, Infinite World, Raging Blast 1 and 2, Battle of Z, Ultimate Tenkaichi, the Xenoverse games, and of course Dragon Ball Fighters, and that isn't even all of them. There are odd games like Dragon Ball Sagas and handheld fighters like Supersonic Warriors. There are so many goddamn Dragon Ball Z games, and the majority of these came out when the series was dead. No Dragon Ball Super, no Broly movie, hell, not even the original comeback movie Yo! Son Goku and Friends Return was released at the point of most of these games coming out. Dragon Ball didn't really see much of a resurgence until about 2013 with the release of the movie Battle of Gods, then later Resurrection F, and this led to the new series Dragon Ball Super being put into production. Then, even later down the line, Super Dragon Ball Heroes, a spin-off anime based on the Japanese card game you find in arcades over there. And if you think I'm going near that right now, I am not, because I just recently got Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission, and it's a bit confusing. Maybe one day when I feel up to the job, but until then, let's stick with good old Dragon Ball Z. Now, I've intentionally left out a series of games, and I'm sure a bunch of you are internally screaming at me, yes, Legacy of Goku and Boo's Fury, those games for the Game Boy Advance. This series of cute little handheld RPGs are, prior to now, the closest we got to a real Dragon Ball Z RPG that covered the series. The more I go on, the more I feel like I need to mention even more Dragon Ball Z games to defend my stance here. Yeah man, like Dragon Ball Origins on the DS and stuff, cool. Attack of the Saiyans, an RPG made by fucking Xenoblade developer Monolith Soft. I've never played it! But ignoring all that, the Legacy of Goku games were a good first attempt at taking the player throughout the whole story of Dragon Ball Z in game form, across 3 games as a matter of fact. Legacy of Goku 1 and 2, and finally Boo's Fury, and they're really fun little RPGs but always left me yearning for something bigger, something more fully fleshed out, and it took a whole 16 years after the release of Boo's Fury for it to happen. Look, sorry to ramble about other games so much, I will get to the point, I promise you, but I just wanted to make sure you understand just how significant this game is. We wanted it and it took until 2020. Let's get into this. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. How is it? You boot the game up and are greeted by Goku standing overlooking the world, preparing you for the journey you're about to embark upon. For about the 100th time. What? It's still Dragon Ball Z, come on. But that's sort of the point of Kakarot as a game. It's essentially the closest a game has ever come to fully telling the story of Dragon Ball Z in full detail. Through dialogue, changing characters mid-story to coincide with current events, and cutscenes which beautifully retell key scenes of the anime in glorious detail. From the Kaioken Kamehameha and the Gallic Gun beam struggle, to Goku reaching Super Saiyan for the first time. This game spares no details during these iconic moments, as we'll get into. To give you an idea of the first few hours of the game, when you initially dive in, it starts with Goku doing some image training, where he meditates and has a mental battle with Piccolo, and you're thrown right into the combat. You finish the fight, then with Gohan have to go do some fishing for Chi-Chi. So right at the beginning you get a decent taste for some of the systems in place throughout the game. You are limited in these opening moments as it railroads you along throughout this initial section of the story. You can't fly and you just go to where it tells you, but it very quickly opens up to where you can freely travel between the open areas that are available and do a bit more exploring and fighting. Now it is worth mentioning that Kakarot isn't a fully contiguous open world like something you'd see in Breath of the Wild. It reminds me more of something like Sonic Adventure. Not the gameplay or the bad parts, but hear me out. More like how Sonic Adventure splits up the world in what are called adventure fields. The same happens in Kakarot, and some of these areas are damn big. You can fly around anywhere you want within the boundaries of these areas, even fly underwater and find things like sunken ships full of rare loot, which you can then take and put towards some of these game systems, like the research and development for instance, where you build vehicles with Bulma. You can cook, there's side quests, orbs to collect, minerals to collect, animals to catch. Breathe. Okay, let's take it easy and we'll cover this bit by bit. Wait in a hurry here, so let's break it down IGN style and go through the game in terms of its categories. So at its core, Kakarot tells the story of Dragon Ball Z, while also providing a more fleshed out world where you can interact with the established characters you've come to know, not just through Dragon Ball Z, but also the original Dragon Ball series. There's a surprising amount of Aether and launch side quests and story to find here. As you progress through the game, it spans the whole series, straight from Raditz attacking and the Saiyans attacking Earth, to Frieza on Namek, the Android/Cell saga, and ends with the Buu saga. Throughout the story, the game uses a mix of in-game animation and more cinematic pre-rendered scenes for the key moments. Now, sadly, not every notable moment has a spectacular pre-rendered scene. For instance, I feel like the scene of Trunks killing Frieza on Earth would be worthy of this magnitude of production, but instead we just got in-game animations, which looks fine, but it could have been better is all I'm saying. But man, the ones that did get the cinematic treatment are gorgeous, visually spectacular, and do well at having a similar gravity and atmosphere as the show. And Kakarot does a pretty good job of following the story beats you'd expect. You go to the red marker, which is a story mission, you get some character dialogue, which will no doubt lead to a fight. What's Dragon Ball Z without its loud, energetic, and bombastic sound effects, accompanied with excellent music? The series and games just ooze action and energy. You know, when you think about it, Dragon Ball Z games are kind of like Sonic the Hedgehog games, in that regardless of how good the game itself is, they tend to have pretty damn good music, and thankfully, Kakarot is no different. Mostly. Kakarot in many areas has a pretty strong soundtrack, with some of the tunes being lifted directly from the show alongside other original pieces created specifically for the game that all hit upon different feelings to add to the atmosphere of the scenes in-game. To give you an idea of what you can expect musically, here are a few of my favourites. I will say, however, that some things can fall flat, the voice acting this time around, and I am by no means criticising the voice actors here, since I'm a big fan of guys like Sean Shamel and Chris Sabat. I mean, hell, I've even met Kyle Hebert and he's great. He yelled Kamehameha and Hadouken at me while making the hand gestures, and honestly, it made me incredibly happy. Good times. In Kakarot, it's more just their performance in some scenes isn't the best ever. For instance, compare the voice acting of the first Super Saiyan transformation scene to the one from Budokai 1.
Enough! I can't allow you to do this anymore! And now, Frieza, you are going to pay! Gohan! Get Piccolo and take him somewhere safe. Go on, son. I'll take care of this monster once and for all. Now get going!
I see now. I understand, Dad. You turned into a Super Saiyan.
He's taken innocent lives again and again. My best friend, Krillin. It's over! Freedom! him go, Frieza! Goku!
And now for the little brat.
How dare you! You're gonna pay for that!
What?
Dad?
Gohan, take Piccolo with you and head back to Earth now! Hurry, Gohan! Before I lose what little sense of reason I have left!
Okay.
What's going on? What's happened to him? No, it can't be!
I think I know what's going on. My dad finally did it. He's become a Super Saiyan.
I've had enough. Now I'm mad, Frieza!
You will know your place, you filthy Saiyan!
The sound design from Budokai, the voice acting, and the music get you so fired up. Not to mention, Goku's face in the background of the falling scene makes me so ready to beat the little bitch Frieza! There's almost a sort of crescendo. It hits upon the pure anger of Goku in this scene, whereas I feel sound-wise, Kakarot isn't quite as satisfying. Even with the improved visuals and slightly more drawn-out pacing, something about Budokai's interpretation here just strikes a chord with me more in some aspects. However, as I mentioned, visually this game delivers spectacularly with incredible camera work, expertly shot angles, and beautiful effects. I have seen some complaints about Kakarot's sound effects being entirely missing from some scenes, which I never experienced personally. I should mention, however, that I'm playing it on PC, and just in case you are wondering, with VSync turned off, the game runs buttery smooth with a very consistent above 60 FPS with visuals cranked out to the max. I did get minor screen tearing, but I think that's more due to my monitor and not the game itself. Good old 1080 Ti. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a minor flex. That was worth it, right? Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is an action RPG, which means it's actual combat with leveling and stuff, not unlike Dragon Ball Xenoverse, but still its own thing. It brings with it its own combat system. As you fly around, you'll have random encounters with enemies. You can see them coming and even avoid them usually fairly easily, and if you're leveled up enough, you can even slam into them to instantly defeat them and get a chunk of experience points. But if not, that's when you gotta fight. The combat system is fairly simple yet nuanced. You have a melee button, a key button for firing key blasts, a dodge/boost button for dodging enemy attacks and flying around fast, and a power up button. It's one of those combat systems that while at face value it seems simple, it works since the fighting can often have you against multiple foes at once, meaning juggling oncoming attacks, switching targets on the fly, dodging, powering up, all the while maintaining your health with items, and even better if you have support members with you, they will naturally assist you by extending your attacks as well as being on hand for super attacks, which you can even choose before bringing them into the battle. The attack button is your bread and butter, however, you can interrupt your attack button inputs with a dodge, brief power up which can really help in some situations, or a key attack, which is actually different with every character. You really start to get a feel for the combat, especially as you power up and gain access to bigger and better super attacks. Speaking of, every character comes equipped with their own set of unlockable supers which you can power up to make stronger and better. As the story progresses, you can learn stronger variants of attacks, so for instance, of course, Goku has his trademarked and totally not stolen from Master Roshi, Kamehameha Beam Attack. As you go on, you'll unlock better versions like Super Kamehameha, a guided Kamehameha that homes in on opponents, and finally a limit breaking Kamehameha. As the game goes on, you really feel the difference in the damage you're outputting and the increased usefulness that your skills have, which to me is the sign of a good game when you can feel the progression, which I will get into.
The combat in Kakarot is surprisingly reserved with its animations. If particular conditions are met, you're rewarded with special animations that go with each move.
In every fight, enemies will have a stun meter, and it can be a bit of a pain to get it down. Some attacks do specifically target the stun meter though, the benefit being that the enemy will stop attacking and be an open target, and for whatever reason, if you attack a stunned enemy with a super attack, you get a pretty damn spectacular animation that plays for every character and every special move. And I'm honestly sad I don't see these more, because it does get to a point where you're overly strong and you defeat enemies before you get a chance to even reduce their stun meter, so it can be hard to see these. There are also really interesting animations that play during significant fights. So the fight against Frieza or Kid Buu for example, you get prompted to do follow-up attacks after you manage to damage them enough to prevent a super move of theirs coming out. And the animations that play during these are incredibly fluid and again are pretty limited in their use, but just show how capable the animators at CyberConnect 2 are. There's one more, and this one's just a little extra, but if you defeat the last enemy while in surge mode with a special move like a Kamehameha, you get what's called a super finish, which shows the attack reaching space from the earth. A nice callback to those rare moments of the show where attacks are at such a scale they break away from the earth. A very nice touch. I feel like this is as good a time as any to dive into the look of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, and I have a lot to talk about here since the game actually does set itself apart visually. Even prior to the release of this game, I was pretty satisfied with the visuals, especially during the fights. Attacks looked stellar, the energy attacks and auras looked great, which is something a Dragon Ball Z fanboy like myself has scrutinized over the years. I've played so many Dragon Ball Z games in my time, all with different interpretations of the visuals. Beam attacks and auras have looked bad. They've looked okay. And they've looked great. Okay, maybe that last one is cheating, but it still counts. But in terms of 3D games at least, I can say with certainty that Kakarot is visually my favourite in these areas. On top of this, flying around with these big realised environments populated with a variety of animals to catch, enemies to fight, fish to catch, characters to talk to, and even mountains, or are they plateaus, to crash through and watch crumble. Kakarot manages to deliver a visually excellent game. For the most part.
Yeah, let's talk about Goku for a minute.
I don't know what it is, man. For me at least, Goku just looks kind of weird in this game. For whatever reason, I just think Goku looks a bit off model, and I'm not really sure what it is that makes me feel that. It's something in his face, I guess. I think he looks a bit better and more like himself in Super Saiyan form. Then you see Super Saiyan 3 Goku and it's like, holy shit, what happened to this man's face? And it's bizarre since, for me at least, it's literally just Goku, the namesake of the game and the one character they really needed to nail the most when you think about it. Vegeta, Piccolo, Yamcha, Ten Shinhan, Trunks, all ages of Gohan, they all look on point. Okay, Trunks looks a bit weird sometimes, but still, Goku man, what happened?
Thankfully, Goku looking a little bit strange is the worst I have to say about this game visually. It's not like he's horrifically deformed or anything, he just looks a bit odd is all. That's fine. It's fine to look odd.
Plus, it can be forgiven very easily since, as I said, this game brings to the table some incredible moments of fluid animation, so the focus with these models were clearly more on being able to animate them in many different ways. Would I say that Kakarot is the best looking Dragon Ball Z game out there? I'm not sure. I think I definitely prefer the overall look of Kakarot over Xenoverse 2. There's something about Xenoverse 2 I just can't get behind. Like, it's a strange, cel-shaded look. I get that's what it's supposed to be. Suffice to say, that's commonplace for anime games these days and has been for a while. But the way Xenoverse did it was just not great. Things just look weirdly shiny. The character models for the most part look okay. Overall, I think Kakarot does a better job graphically than Xenoverse, but where I'm concerned, nothing will ever come close to beating Dragon Ball FighterZ in terms of raw graphical fidelity.
Trust me, I know what you're thinking. I almost feel bad comparing Kakarot to Dragon Ball FighterZ. They're totally different types of games. I mean, one is a full 3D adventure action RPG, and the other one is a 2D fighting game with very restricted camera angles on a 2D plane. It's not really fair to compare, you know?
But you can't deny the visual spectacle of Dragon Ball FighterZ, man. The characters are perfectly on model, the attacks and overall look of everything is honestly flawless. A game which truly begs for screenshots to be used as PC wallpapers.
Yes, I have done that.
But back to my original question, do I think Kakarot is objectively the best looking full 3D Dragon Ball Z game? And honestly, yes, I think it is. For all it offers in terms of capturing the world of Dragon Ball Z in 3D, it nails it on about 99% of things. Although, I did find it weird how during the last cutscene, somehow Dende has reverted back to being a child. This is not to do with the story or canon of the show, this is entirely a graphical error on the animator's part. It's safe to say,
You fucked up, lads.
now that we've gotten that out of the way, this is an RPG, so let's finally talk about the leveling.
Now, as per usual with me, I'm kind of late to the party with this review, I'm well aware, but the main reason isn't out of laziness, it's because I wanted to be very thorough and concrete with my review, and unlike the big boys of YouTube, I had to wait to buy my copy like the rest of us normal people.
Considering Kakarot is a game that follows the story of the series, and throughout the show characters get better and stronger as time progresses, it would be unreasonable for characters to get ridiculously strong early on, so in this case it can feel fairly limited. However, I have found in my time playing that a little grinding can go a long way, not to mention there are ways to boost your leveling through the use of the cooking mechanic and the communities, which I'll get into later. I did notice early on the EXP received from defeating enemies is fairly small, to the point where it would require quite a lot of grinding to actually get anywhere, but there are definitely opportunities throughout the story to where grinding becomes much more of a feasible option. Namely, during intermissions. Whenever you finish a main saga of the Dragon Ball Z story, you'll get what are called intermissions. During these segments, there will be a bunch of little side quests on offer. After a certain point in the story, you can go to the Capsule Core and talk to Android 21. Yes, that Android 21 from Dragon Ball FighterZ. They never address why she's there, nor do they explicitly name her, but she's there. I appreciate the reference. You can tackle these training missions at any time, but it definitely becomes easier when you're over leveled. The enemies in these missions have a bad habit of ganging up on you, and when it takes a while to defeat even one of them, it can be pretty challenging. Outside of training, the world is fully open to you. You can gather Dragon Balls, and it's here where you can really start to make a dent in the leveling of your characters, since it fully opens up bringing supporter characters with you who all gain experience as you fight. I'm not kidding when I say having supporters helps out a lot, simply from being able to call them in with super attacks when the going gets tough, to being able to riddle the screen with ki blasts, and if the fight goes on long enough, being able to do what's called a Z combo. Think of it sort of like Persona's all-out attack, or even the Rising Rush from Dragon Ball Legends for those of you who play it.
Yeah, I play this one far too much.
The Z combo is a big attack that involves all fighters on your team and culminates in a big beam attack, which is why it's perfectly comparable to a Dragon Ball Legends Rising Rush attack. Bringing in supporters means you can invest in 3 characters at once, however it is worth mentioning whoever is sitting being unused currently also receives some EXP, so they'll kind of keep up with your main fighters but still trail behind. As you travel the world, you'll end up gathering D medals, which you can get through side quests or simply just find lying around the world. D medals are kind of like a currency used to gain new skills through the training grounds. You'll see a number of required D medals to learn new skills for your characters. Investing in these skills definitely helps up your game and can help you deal out way more damage. Strangely though, there is one limitation on these training ground skills, is that some attacks are actually restricted by story limitations, so you can only go so far with these skills before continuing on with the main story. But as far as I can tell, there is no limit on leveling just as far as your patience will allow you, but honestly only a few levels per saga will do, since they just give you the edge on the most basic enemies, maybe not the stronger villainous enemies, but the story does kind of railroad you along with the leveling, so it's kind of unnecessary to go overkill with the leveling, since when it comes down to it, skill and strategy are more important, and if you're not the best at the fighting, you can easily stock up on healing items, which you can spam like crazy, which comes down more to saving money, which you can gain by flying around picking up stuff to sell.
A lot of people do criticise this aspect of the RPG mechanics because your level is largely dictated by how the story guides you along, and leveling outside of these bounds can be quite difficult. I never found it to be something that bothered me that much, honestly, but I do understand people's reason for disliking it. But as I said, you don't really need to level up that much outside of what the story railroads you along with. If anything, it's a good excuse as any to go sideline the story, do some side quests and explore.
Now, why would you bother doing the side quests? Well, if only I'd known, or at least appreciated the reason why a bit earlier on. The simple answer is soul emblems. These are characters you can acquire, each with a unique set of traits, which can be used to contribute to what this game calls communities. When I first saw communities, I'll admit it confused me a bit at first, but once you understand the benefits of communities and how to get the most out of them, I quickly began to appreciate their inclusion. Communities are one of this game's systems to contribute to your character's overall strength, ability to grow, and buffs outside of your typical leveling. You can acquire gifts by talking to NPCs, finishing side quests, and more. These gifts are all used to upgrade your soul emblems to better contribute to your communities. For example, one of the communities is called the Z Warrior community, and every soul emblem in the Z Warrior community will contribute to your character's performance in combat, so by leveling up this community, it will boost the damage of your output and more. Similarly, the training community can contribute to your actual fighting, but mainly affects how much experience you gain from every battle. And at max rank, it doubles your experience. Now, I would say invest in maxing this one out early to reap the benefits, but getting these communities to max level is pretty difficult. You need a lot of soul emblems that are fit for the job, since as I mentioned, soul emblems vary in ability and what areas they're stronger in. You'll also need a lot of gifts to max out each soul emblem's contribution to the community, and honestly, that as well can be tough. You need a shit ton of points to get to level 10. I'm going to continue to experiment with communities going forward, but based on my experience in my first playthrough, I feel it's likely impossible to max out every community simultaneously, so pick your favourite and focus on that one.
This is the perfect segue to talk about something that Kakarot does that I really appreciate, and it ties into what we're talking about, soul emblems. Essentially, you can use the Dragon Balls to wish back past enemies and threaten them to be your friend.
During intermissions, you can freely search the world for the Dragon Balls, and quickly, I'll say. It's somewhat underwhelming the types of wishes available. You can get Z-Orbs, which are pretty plentiful anyway, more money and not even that much. There are much better ways to make money in this game, or rare items. Besides those wishes, you can do something more interesting and wish back characters like Raditz, Nappa and the Ginyu Force and more. You can train with these characters, and since by the time you can get them, you're way stronger anyway, you just bully them into not being bad guys, and from that get soul emblems. Pretty good ones too, and I wish I'd taken advantage of that earlier on to contribute more to my communities. The dialogue shared between you and these revived characters are always really enjoyable. They're not aware of quite how much they've missed since they died and were revived, and still act like they're the biggest villains out there. Raditz. I know you're a joke character to many, but I still think they could have done more with you, personally. It's fine though, this game makes up for it by giving Raditz the most sick music ever. On top of communities, you can contribute to your overall strength through cooking. As you fly around the world of Kakarot, you'll see these little glowing glints of light. Some of these are items and ingredients which can be used to make dishes, which will add buffs to your party for a period of time. And funnily enough, you can power up how effective your cooking is through the cooking community. You can either create individual dishes, or if you make a bunch of dishes and bring them to Chi-Chi, she'll prepare a full feast for you and you get to see the character enjoying themselves and chowing down. Except Piccolo, with his humble bowl of water. What a boy. Speaking of Piccolo, remember that episode of Dragon Ball Z where Piccolo and Goku drive cars? Yeah, they added that to this game, and you can freely drive with characters who have a driver's license. And it's pretty fun, honestly. Whoever is your second party member also sits in the other seat, so I chose Piccolo and Gohan, just a man and his son enjoying a Sunday drive. While they're driving in the car, you can also freely change the music that's playing and listen to anything from the game's soundtrack, which is a nice touch that I appreciate.
So here's where things get left up to you, the fans. Mods. It's also a benefit of playing on the PC. Mod support for Dragon Ball Z games has always been stellar. The Dragon Ball Z community at large is very supportive of these games and loves to churn out all kinds of wacky and wonderful mods.
Up until now, I have played Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 so much to the point where people in my Discord server, such as that guy Joe UK, actually made a joke out of it at my expense.
I am a Dragon Ball Z fanboy through and through. I'll openly admit it, I love what I love, so suck a lemon, Joe. I'm kidding. I love you.
The reason I could get so much enjoyment from Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 is that, one, I love the vanilla game. It's the kind of game where you can just pick up and play for a while. I'm someone who sort of enjoys simple repetitive games. Unsure why. There's plenty of DLC for the game which adds more quests and stuff, but the mods available for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 just up the game in so many areas. From graphical mods adding new custom attacks, which in some cases are incredibly polished, to more transformations for custom avatar characters going from Super Saiyan 1 all the way through Super Saiyan Blue and beyond to Ultra Instinct, to even adding characters such as Mastered Ultra Instinct Goku Black. The same can even be said for Dragon Ball FighterZ with fun cosmetic mods such as different outfits for characters, Super Saiyan hair for certain characters, and even model swaps such as Broly being swapped with Untitled Goose Broly.
Truly terrifying.
Since Dragon Ball Z Kakarot was developed in Unreal Engine 4, a widely accessible engine prior to the game's release, fans were already gearing up for mod creation and giving out ideas for potential mods, and in some cases, this really is a blessing, since certain mods open up characters like Gotenks and Vegito to be playable again, since they're only available in a few fights but no longer become available in the post-game content, which is unfortunate since they're really fun characters to play as, but with mods, it becomes possible to enjoy them again in different areas of the game.
Lastly, I'd like to talk about what may or may not be in store for the future of Kakarot. People have been data mining the game, and there are some potential leaks and rumours that may allude to future content for the game.
Those who've kept up to date with modern Dragon Ball, namely Dragon Ball Super and the movies therein, will know of the characters Beerus and Whis. These two characters only appearing in Dragon Ball content which takes place beyond the movie Battle of Gods, were data mined, and models for these two characters were found to be within the game's files, as well as Super Saiyan God Vegeta and Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta.
So what does this mean? Well, while future content has only been slightly alluded to, this makes it fairly easy to speculate where the game may go.
The official word on DLC so far is that of 2 original episodes, which people are theorising could be focusing on the new original character Bonyu, the 6th member of the Ginyu Force, but with all these findings of files within the game, it's easy to deduce that CyberConnect 2 is not finished with Kakarot, nowhere near it in fact. On top of the models and content which allude to Dragon Ball Super, there have also been some dialogue files found which mentions the character Broly by name, which people are connecting to the non-canon movie Broly's Second Coming, which is incredibly interesting since that would mean potential for both classic Broly and new Broly from the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Kakarot, and the prospect of them going through even more of the story beyond Z fills me with excitement. CyberConnect 2 has done a pretty outstanding job of bringing the world of Dragon Ball Z to life in the most comprehensive and accurate video game the series has ever had.
Kakarot may have a couple flaws, but it is a love letter to the series, and if you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z, I can say with confidence you'll have a great time with this one. And if you haven't seen it, this might be a good excuse to watch Dragon Ball Super if the rumours are led to believe. It's not that bad, it's got some good moments. I'll leave it in your hands. Thank you for watching.
Yo, just wanted to give you a quick thank you for watching this far into the video. If you enjoyed and fancy sticking around for some more, please consider subscribing. This video is made possible by the continued support of my Patreon supporters who you can see on screen now. If you'd like to see your name here, then you can by following the link and pledging as little as $1 a month. But whatever you decide to do, one last thank you from me. Until next time.